Okay, my friends, once again, I wish everyone peace in our hearts. And let's start our second session, which will cover the topic of education. Now, what does family relationships and education have in common? Well, everything, because our first school is our home. Back in the 1800s, there was a school reform in which the state became responsible to educate our children. Before that, you received your education, the majority of us, through religious organizations. And as a result, not only they taught to our intellect, but they also spoke of things to our soul. But after the separation of church and state, the state became responsible to instruct our children. And that happened just a couple of years after the Industrial Revolution. The world was changing back in the year 1789. Many revolutions, and with that came also the Industrial Revolution. The steam engine take place and all the factories were created, and from a rural kind of lifestyle, we now had an industrialized lifestyle. So the school system needed to prepare the workforce of the future. And as a result, all the main subjects came into place in a direct need, in a direct proportion of the industrialization process. As a result, mathematics became extremely important, grammar became extremely important, and all the other things that we thought were unnecessary for us to make a living in an industrialized world was left aside, including dancing, arts, music. So we now think that the education is left for the school to do it. No one else are supposed to teach our children besides education. And the purpose of that is so we can help this child succeed in life. Now, that has everything to do with our definition of success. We define success as having material things. If you are someone who is well established financially, if you don't have to work maybe, or if you're a famous individual, we think that person is successful. Now, in Spiritist terms, success is not primarily of what you have here, because what you have here, you leave behind. In Spiritism, we're trying to pursue what is eternal, not what is transitory. Our material belongings are transitory. We don't take our diplomas with us. Your coffin will not have drawers so you could put your jewelry in there, or your car, or the titles, or your house. It doesn't come with those things. I mean, it could have the drawer, but you're not taking anything. But what we do take with us, it's our actions towards one another, negative or positive. So in Spiritism, we see the school, the earth as being a big school for the soul. So we are immersed in the university of life. And the main subjects here, it's not grammar or mathematics. It's not mainly important for you to know how to add and subtract. What is mainly important is that instead of you looking in order to have wealth or living well, the pursuit is for you to understand what life is all about, to live your life wisely. And that comes with education. Not an education that talks to our intellect, but an education that speaks to our soul. So there are two kinds of education: the one that speaks to our intellect, the one that speaks to our soul. And children in families, most of them are left to only learn intellect education and not moral, because our definition of success has been to have money. So we tell our children, all I want from you is to become a lawyer. All I want from you is to become a physician. Don't do nothing else. Just go to school and study because you need to get a diploma to survive. Now, once they get that diploma and they are prepared for the workforce, they will spend about 8 hours of their day working. But the other 24 hours minus 8 that we're working is 16 hours. On those 16 hours, we're sleeping, and if we sleep 8 hours, we're sleeping next to someone, and the other 16 hours, who we are together with. We are together, I'm sorry, another 8 hours. 8. The other 8 hours, we are relating to one another. I was thinking about the number 16 because in my comprehension, we are constantly relating around those 16 hours. Because even if you're asleep, you are relating to the other person next to you. They could be snoring, you elbowing them. So there's a relationship going there during your sleep time. So who is preparing us for that kind of relationship? The school system prepares us just for 8 hours, but the other 16 hours, there is no preparation. And we grow up thinking that we know how to relate to one another, but we don't. Unfortunately, the majority of us, we don't. And the result of that is many people with depression and bipolar, gazillions of money spent on medication that doesn't treat any illness, but just treat the symptoms, broken-hearted, broken families, and uneducated children who go on with their lives doing mistakes as the parents did. So it is extremely important for us to understand that it's our main job is to educate them for the future. Is to educate them, not for us. Once again, Khalil Gibran, gives a perfect image of what a parent is. He says in his book, The Prophet, and inside the book, this woman came to him and says, please speak to us of children. And he says, your children are not your children. Your children are sons and daughters of life longing for itself. And at the end, he says, your children are like an arrow, you are the bow, and God is the archer. God sends the children through you in the future of life. So the children, they come through you, but they don't belong to you. You can impose yourself and force yourself to be like them, but you cannot force them to be like you. Because life moves forward, not backwards. So what this poem mainly says is that we should educate the children not for us, but for life. Because the children will not remain at your house forever. They will leave your hands one day. So we need to redefine success. Because if our success is mainly what we have, we will educate our children always to have. At our Spiritist Center, Divine Light, we visit a nursing home every Sunday. And we learn beautiful things at this nursing home. Just one of the stories to illustrate my point. We had a friend of ours who used to play the guitar, but this friend did not speak a word in English. And of course, the elderly there were all English speaking. So I asked him, John, what are you going to sing to them? And he says, well, when you love, music speaks to the whole world. It doesn't matter. So I know, but these people still need to understand, What are you going to be singing about? says, well, maybe I could sing happy birthday. I said, happy birthday? But what if no one is having their birthday? And this was July. It was about 110 degrees outside. We entered this room. There were two people there. One was laying down, sleeping, and the other elder man was awake. He greeted us. We opened the window because, unfortunately, at that particular nursing home, they don't take showers every day. So they give off all these odors. They become even stronger when you have closed doors. So we opened the windows. I'm looking at my friend. It is so hot. And now he's singing happy birthday. And I thought the man had to know what was going on because he kept going, happy birthday. And he was twisting from one side to the other, going along. And then I said, well, John, can you tell me what else is going to come out of this repertoire of yours? And then he says, well, I'm going to sing La Cucaracha. But that's not even in English. And he said, I know he knows La Cucaracha. And the man knew it, La Cucaracha. Oh. And he was done with La Cucaracha for the past 10 minutes, singing La Cucaracha. I was looking for a spray to kill the cucaracha. And then came the last song. What will be now? What was left in your repertoire? And he says, well, I have a special one now. So he prepares himself, he strikes the first chord, and he starts singing. I want to wish you a Merry Christmas. I want to wish. And then he started getting to the second part where you even sing louder, and he couldn't reach the high note. And when he tried for it, that's when he woke the man to the other bed. This man woke up all dizzy. He said, oh my God, did I sleep for the past 6 months? It was July and he was singing Merry Christmas. We learned so many beautiful things at this place. But one thing that we did learn, we were amazed that most of these people never got any visits. They never received relatives or a kid or child. And of course, being very judgmental of people's behavior when we are naive and psychologically immature, we place the blame on the kids. Most of the time, when someone died at this place, the nurse used to call the family, and the family used to scream at the nurse, because for the family, when they placed this elderly at the nursing home, they already considered them dead. So the family used to get very angry at the nurses for calling them to let them know that the relative had passed away. And we used to be judgmental about this. What awful kids! They're very ungrateful. And ungratefulness hurts deeply. And then, as we knew the elderly by visiting them more often, we got to know them. And we understood that they told their kids, I want you to become a lawyer. I want you to become a physician. I want you to become an accountant. Everything that the world applauses. But they never told these kids, I want you to be a human being. I want you to love. I want you to respect. I want you to give your best. They never heard those sentences. So teach your kids wisely, because they will choose the nursing home for you. So we need to redefine what success is. Spiritism doesn't condemn anything. It's always about enlightening. You're not prohibitive of anything. You're not committing a sin. Spiritism, it's about enlightening our conscience to our duties. There's nothing wrong with having. We could have things. You could own a helicopter, if you will. But unfortunately, the majority of the people, they don't know how to have things. The things have them. If something happens with their house, for them it is the same as they lost their life. Well, so you never had a house. The house had you. They want this car so bad, and all they think of is this particular car. When the car is gone, they are depressed for the next 6 months. Well, we never had a car. The car had you. We are supposed to have these material possessions for temporary purpose, because we're here in a transitional stage, not permanently. So we should work towards spiritual gatherings. We should work toward spiritual values, the eternal values that we can take with us. The rest we need to leave behind. We use it, we don't get attached to it. And then we grow spiritually. If we have that definition in our minds, we're here to grow spiritually. Now, when we educate our children, we are looking to develop in them these internal values that God entrusts us to do. In the Spirits book, Allan Kardec asked the highly evolved spirits, can we consider parenthood a mission? And he says, yes, indeed, it is a big mission. The highly evolved spirits stated that it is such an important mission that it actually shapes society. Going back to the first lecture about men and women, men have been for so many centuries the scourge of society. We have put women down, we have suppressed them, we have depressed them, we have crushed them. And as a result, after they started fighting for the equal freedom, for the freedom of vote, for equality in jobs and positions in society, women went to the other end of the spectrum. And instead of trying to develop their own womanhood to bring the best out of womanhood, they started copying men's worst symptoms, worst vices and addictions. Before then, women did not used to smoke like that, or drink. Sometimes I see some women that I'd rather get beat up by a man than this woman, the way they look, so strong and macho. You fear them. Why? Because in order to overcome that suppression throughout the ages, they have went to the other side of the spectrum, and now they started copying men's worst vices. And then they wanted to fight for the same positions in society that were fulfilled by men before. And God gave us different physical organizations for different kind of obligations. And women wanted to copy men, failing to understand that women's mission is much more important than men's. So the highly evolved spirits, they established that women actually shapes the future of society, because children have their first encounter with their mother. Not to place the responsibility on mothers alone, because the father, of course, he educates as well, but women plays a special role because of your sensitivity, because of your understanding of human behavior. And you definitely have the greater impact on your child than a father does. So the women's mission is greater than men's. If men knew that, we would learn from the women, instead of trying to beat up on women. We men are very good in inflicting pain. Women are divine in receiving pain and overcoming those pain with dignity. That's what we do as women. So the redefinition of success is, we hear being successful is to develop our inner values. The seeds of perfection that God has placed on you, and your parents will water that seed in order to take place. So I will write on the board the things that we can do in order to have a better education with our children. Because in question 913 of the Spirits book, Allan Kardec asked the highly evolved spirits, where does all pain, where does all misery, where all the vices of human imperfections come from? And the spirits have answered, selfishness. Selfishness is at the root of all of our problems. Now, on question 917, he asked, how can we uproot selfishness from human behavior? And the spirits have established that we need to look at our own organizations to see what we're doing, because unfortunately our school system and our workforce system, our social systems, even our religious systems, instead of trying to help us eradicate selfishness from us, they incite selfishness in us. Now, someone might say, but why we cannot be selfish? What's wrong with being selfish? No, it's the law of the universe that we need to share. This is why all the highly evolved spirits that have stepped foot on this planet, and the highest among them all, with no comparison whatsoever, Jesus Christ, taught us the law of love. But even from the material perspective, if I want to break this table up into pieces, I will go all the way up to the atoms. What are atoms all about? Protons, electrons, and neutrons. They are sharing their energies together to have harmony in the most elementary particle of a material piece of wood. Now, let's say if the proton decided to be selfish and says, you know what, I don't want to share anymore with you guys. I'm going to leave neutron and proton alone and let me go on my business. Then will be disharmony. The whole table here will break into pieces because it could not hold this structure together. When you look at the universe, the solar system and the stars and the galaxies, what are they doing? They're sharing energy with one another. Look at our planet. If the moon decided to be selfish and she decided to go on her own and leave Earth behind by itself, Earth will cease to exist. You will also throw Earth out of orbit. You will probably throw the other planets out of orbit because all these planets are sharing through the gravitational force of the universe energy. So love and sharing is at the core of everything that exists. This is why it's not healthy for us to be selfish. So what's the purpose of any educational system? To eradicate selfishness from our behavior. That's where jealousy comes from. That's where vanity comes from. That's where pride and laziness and all the other things that makes us miserable comes from selfishness. And unfortunately, our organizations, they incite selfishness, even the religious ones, without criticizing other religions. Sometimes I sit and I watch some of these programs. And there is a part of the program that it's called the testimonies. You've heard testimonies before, right? A testimony is when someone will come up and say how their life changed after they start going at this specific religious place. And usually this is what they say. I was broke, I had no job, and now God has blessed me because I have a job, I have a car. Someone else will come and say, well, I did not have my house, I rented for so many years, and now God has blessed me, and now I have this new home. So even in the religious institutions, we are associating the fact of being happy, being peace, being successful, with having material things. Meanwhile, when you study the Master Jesus Christ, he is always teaching us how to strive for the kingdom of heaven. And yet, we are fighting for the kingdom of earth. This is the kingdom we want to rule. This is the kingdom we want to teach. We want to preach. And unfortunately, instead of detaching ourselves from material things, we are attaching ourselves even more to material things. The main source of pain that we should be liberating ourselves from, it is exactly what we're doing on the opposite way. We are attaching ourselves even more. So, we need, once again, to redefine what success is. Success is to attend to our spiritual obligations. Peace can only be felt when you attend your duties, your spiritual duties. And then you could have your material things. But the primary purpose of your existence is to develop spiritually, not financially. And there are some very rich and smart people who have both. They are very smart, and at the same time they are very spiritual, because they learned how to detach the things from themselves. So the things don't have them. They have the things, and they use them temporarily. So we need to educate our children not for us, but for the world. When you see parents educating their children, sometimes the parents, they reinforce the selfishness on the children. And the little children's mind absorbs all the examples that he or she sees it. If I have in my mind that this child will be always with me, I'm not educating her for the world, I'm educating her for myself. If a child spills milk on the floor, if your child knocks down the milk on the floor, a 4-year-old, you'll go ahead and you clean the milk and you put the glass back on the table. On the second day, child spills milk on the floor, you go ahead, you clean the milk and you put the glass on the table. On the 5th day, she's knocking the glass out of the floor, you are cleaning the milk and you're putting the glass on the table. What is the value I'm instilling in this child's mind, in her behavior? Whenever I make a mess, someone will clean up for me. Then I'm 35 years old, I just made a mess in my house. Mommy, I don't have money to pay my car. I don't have money to pay my house. Can you fix this mess for me? Well, that's what I taught my child how to behave. Some people say, you know what? I was so poor when I was little, and now I will give everything that I wished to have to my children. So here we have this child with 20 pairs of shoes, but only a pair of feet to wear them, a pair of foot. I'm giving all these toys and all these cars, and if my child raises her hand, I give it to her. She asks, she receives. That's the law. And then, what is it that I'm instilling in this child's mind? In life, when you ask, you will receive. My friends, is that how life is? Yes or no? No. You have to work hard for it. And that when I get to my teens, mommy doesn't want to give me anything anymore, but I'm accustomed to easy money. I'm accustomed to have things. So what am I going to do to get the same kind of money? Let me sell drugs. Much easier. Why am I going to spend my time in a fast food business when I can make 10 times the amount of money in just 2 hours of work? That's what I'm teaching my child. You see children wearing these expensive shoes, and you wonder if the child knows if the shoes are that expensive. A 4-year-old. At my job in the prison system, sometimes I get a 33-year-old, a 35-year-old, and I ask them the question already knowing the answer. Are you married? No. Do you have kids? Yes. How many of them? 5. And then I ask them, is it from the same woman? And I already know the answer. No, these are 5 different women. And then he gives me that slick smile, trying to show to me his manhood, because he has 5 women, have 5 children. Now, I go on explaining to this man that it takes a bum and a prostitute to make a child, because it's a biological law. You fertilize a woman, she gets pregnant. That's it. Now, to raise a child, make sure that child is mentally healthy, that takes some real courage. That takes men made of steel, women who are strong. And then I asked them, what brings you here? Well, I was trying to get my child some boots. And I asked him, what kind of boots were you trying to get your child that you're selling drugs? These got to be very expensive boots. And they say, indeed. These are Timberland boots. You know what Timberland boots are? Yes?
No. Yes.
Timberland boots, some boots made of steel, but the brand name is just about the brand name itself that makes them very expensive. And I ask him, and this happens very often, how much does it cost a Timberland boot? Oh, for my 4-year-old, about $75. And then, what is the primary purpose of a boot? Well, to protect your feet. Now, if you buy a boot from the Payless store, which will cost you about $8 or $9, would it protect your son's feet the same way that the Timberland boot will protect it? And he says, yes. And I ask him, do you think that the child can distinguish the Timberland boots from the Payless boot? No. So who you really bought that boot for? Was it for you or for your child? Because when you walk around the neighborhood showing your child's boot, the child doesn't know, so it must be for yourself that you want to show off what you can do for your child. So others can see what the child is wearing. And thinking in the child's mind, I think there is no child on this planet that would rather walk barefoot and having the father next to her or next to him than wearing these expensive shoes, expensive boots, but the father is far, far away. So what we are instilling in this child's mind, material things. And she will grow and he will grow towards wanting material things. So since parenthood is a mission, what is it that we can do to fulfill our mission, which is to make better human beings out of these babies that come through us? Well, the technique is, you've heard Christ saying that when you sow, you shall what? Reap. The word sow, S-O-W, stands to plant. When you sow, it means you scatter seeds. So a farmer wants to plant orange, he would scatter seeds of orange on top of the soil. That's what sow is. Now reap is when he actually waits for the food to be grown, the fruit is ready, and now he will reap the orange from the tree. You reap what you sow. So this applies to all aspects of our lives. Children, grown-ups, and elderly, in all different aspects, the process is the same. First of all, you sow a thought. You sow a thought. You think of something. That thought will now create an emotion. Our thoughts create emotions. An example of this is, I think that girl is a bad girl. What are my emotions now? I don't like that girl. I think she's a nice girl. What are my emotions? I like that girl. So my thought produced my emotion. I sow a thought and I reaped an emotion. And since this is very dynamic, because now that I'm reaping this emotion, I'm also sowing the emotion. And when I sow an emotion, what am I going to reap now? I will reap an action. We act based on how we feel. You feel miserable, you do stupid things. You feel happy, you do nice things. When you are miserable, it could be sunny outside and you hate the day, you think it's awful. When you're at peace, when you're happy, it could be raining, snowing, and it still looks beautiful. You give excuses that, the water is good for the plants. But when you're miserable and it's a beautiful day out there, you think that the sun is too hot, it's burning your skin. It's all about perception. So, I think that's a bad girl. That's my thinking. What am I reaping? I don't like that girl. What's my action? I'm not going to even say hello to her. I will ignore her. I will not be pleasant to her. I am acting on something here. Oh, I think she's a nice girl. That's the sowing of my thought. What would be the emotion? I like that girl. What would be the action? Let me go ahead and say hello. So I acted based on my emotions. And now that we do this repeatedly, we are constantly doing the same thing. We are sowing this action. And we so often sow the action that now becomes a habit. We're not even thinking anymore. We're just doing it. Who here had first started driving a stick shift car? If you did, nothing could be happening around while you're driving. You couldn't have the music on. The passenger couldn't distract you. You had to look straight and just think about what you're doing. You had to concentrate so much in every move you're making with your left foot and your right hand. After a while, you start putting makeup and driving with your left hand. You have the cell phone and unfortunately now texting, which leads people to kill themselves. That's a suicide, But it became a habit. You've done it so much that you don't have to think about it anymore. Now, when you are sowing your habits, you have all these different kinds of habits. Your habit will now lead you to reap your character. Your habit will lead you to reap your character. And in that question, 9:17, they already mentioned, Allan Kardec said that we need to manage intellect. We need to manage character the same way we manage intellect. We send our kids to school. They learn how to add and subtract, multiply and divide. We teach them how to speak, how to write, how to listen. We invest so much to develop their intellect. The same amount of energy, of money, of investment needs to be applied in order to manage their character, which has to do with everything here. The art of managing character, straight from Allan Kardec. Why? Because our character, when we sow our character, will lead us to our destiny. We sow a thought, we'll reap an emotion. We sow an emotion, we'll reap an action. We sow an action, we'll reap habits. We sow habits, we'll reap characters. We sow characters, we'll reap our destiny. If I have negative thoughts, what kind of emotions am I going to reap? Now say it as if you're alive. You sow negative thought, what you're going to reap? You sow negative emotions, what you're going to reap? You sow negative actions, what you're going to reap? Say it as if you're alive. You sow negative habit, what you're going to reap? Are you dead? Say it. One more time. You sow a negative character, what you're going to reap? Negative destiny. Well, just so we could play a little, because we ate, you're seated, it's warm. Negative thought will lead me to bad emotions. Bad emotions will lead me to stupid actions. Stupid actions will lead me to very negative habits. Those negative habits will give me a poor character. That poor character will lead me to a miserable destiny. Martin Luther King Jr., who we love so much, have said that one day in his I Have a Dream speech, I want to live in a nation where my children would not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. One more time. Character. Good. Our character, because our character is what shapes our destiny. So the parent's job is to change the child's thought. In the second part of the Spirit's book, once again, Allan Kardec asks, why do we have to go through the period of infancy? What's the point of that? Why can we not be born grown-ups already? Well, during the stage of infancy, the child is more moldable to the parent's influence. Our family ties, since the purpose of our lives is to love one another. Sometimes we're born into a family of people that we have created conflicts before. Sometimes you ask yourself, why in the world that woman is not my sister? I like her so much because my biological sister, I detest her. Why not she is not my mother? Because my friend's mother is so nice and kind to me, and yet I hate my mother. Where all these natural tendencies come from? All these negative inclinations to hate our siblings. Well, these are people who we have compromised ourselves with them in a past reincarnation, and here we are, born in the same family to atone to our mistakes, to our negative deeds from the past. I have caused them hurt, and now we are born in the same family because simply we are from the same bloodline. We have an obligation not to do them evil things. So we try to repair them. We try to help them. We don't like them. There's certain vibration between us, but I have an obligation to do it simply because I'm her biological sister, biological brother. So we are born into families in order to repair our mistakes from the past. Some families are here to fulfill a mission together. Others, the majority, are here to repair mistakes from the past. And let's say that you have a son or a daughter that is coming through you, and this is someone who has killed you in a previous reincarnation, or you have killed this other person. If that baby had all the adult characteristics, you would never be able to care for this child. You remember them right away and said, oh my God, this is my enemy, I hate you, and you strangle them. You remember right away who they were. But then, this spirit, who is an old spirit, comes back in this infantile expression, so delicate. You look at the child, you cannot help it but feel sorry because the child is so gentle and so fragile. The spirits go on to say that even the first expressions of a child after birth is to cry. You know, the child doesn't born smiling. She is born crying. That is to cause the woman's attention so she could picture how fragile this child is. And now, this enemy that you have, it is in this very fragile body. And now you feel that you need to help this child. Even if you don't feel that strong maternal love, you have an obligation, you think to yourself, that it's the right thing to do to take care of the child. So infancy is given to us because in infancy, we are more moldable to our mother's and father's influence. That's the period we need to teach them. And some people say, well, when they grow up, we'll teach them. That's it. That's too late. Some parents comes to our Spiritist center and they say, my kid is getting high. I don't know what to do with him anymore. We send him to a therapist. They're giving him medication. Is it possible you can talk to the spirits to fix my kid? What spirits you want me to talk to? The only spirit I need to talk to, it's you. Because I remember the child when they were little. And she could not bring this child to the Spiritist center because Sunday they had to go to school. So they couldn't come at nighttime. So today, this child knows how to write, knows how to read, knows how to listen, knows how to add and subtract, but yet has not learned how to live because he's getting high, destroying his life. A child is just like a seed, a plant that you put in the ground. You place the seed on the ground and you watch it grow, and then you place this very firm piece of wood next to it, and you wrap that tree around that piece of wood so it could grow up in a vertical, straight way. Now, if you let that tree grow by itself, usually it takes different positions and it grows crooked. Now that is a big, thick trunk, do you think that you can straighten that tree out? Very difficult thing to do. It's the analogy with the adults. Straighten up adults. Their personality is already structured. It's already formed. The ideal thing is to teach them since day 0. Because after they get through their teenager years, why teenagers are so problematic? That's because the spirit who is in that body, it is now recovering all his old memories subconsciously. The old self is coming to being, but now it has the impact of this new self that the parents were teaching the child day one. This is why teenagers are so problematic. It's an identity crisis they're going through. They don't know who they are. So the ideal thing is to teach them from day one. So when does education start? When the woman gets pregnant. You talk to the belly. You sing to the baby. And of course, the baby will not hear your words, but he will definitely feel your vibrations of love. I will be a very good mother to you. And the father also rubs the belly tenderly. I'll be a very nice father to you, I promise. I will do my best. The spirit who is inside the womb is already receiving the positive vibrations. And from day number 1, parents will watch the children's inclinations and tendencies. Just like a detective will be observing their child every day to see what are the negative traits of that newly reincarnated spirit that needs to be eradicated, transformed. So when you see your child playing with toys and she says, "No, these are my toys," what is that a sign of? Selfish. Everybody? Selfish. Right? These are my toys. This is my room. No, mommy, I want this, not that. If we allow her to go on with this will be the adult who's telling you, "Mother, get out of my house. This is my house." The nursing home, "You're too old for me. Go to the nursing home." That's the child right there. Oh, how much we complain about our politicians. Politicians are so crooked. They talk about bad about each other in such a negative way. They give bad examples. Well, those politics, they had parents, their children. What we were teaching, the world belongs to the wise. Wherever you go, you need to get the best out of people. No. Do not ever be under, always be on top of things. Not on a positive way, but on a negative way. No. If you could take advantage, my son, go ahead, you do it. This is how the world works. What am I teaching my child? To become a crooked politician. Now that he's on top of the world, he will steal from the people. He has no supervisors. He supervises himself, and since he has no morals, why in the world he's going to watch himself? But yet, that complicated man will be reborn again in miserable conditions. And since he took from the people instead of giving to the people, because this is why we pay politicians too. The government doesn't have any money. Your check is less because tax are taken out of your check. Why? Because we pay the politicians to run the country. And then, when they're supposed to serve us, they serve themselves. They forget about the promises before elections. And as a result, they will reincarnate. And now they will be in difficult positions. Positions in which they will really work hard to serve the people, and yet get no money. Social workers, teachers, they're serving the people, working really hard, and yet they don't get no money. Why? Because they already got paid. Now they just need to work. And who will be the parents of those childs? Those same parents. And it creates a vicious cycle. So in order to educate them, we need to observe from the beginning, what are the thoughts? What are the emotions? What are the actions? So we can identify the character, because we're trying to change theirs and our destiny. That's what family and education, it's all about, to change our destiny. But the parent says, no, my kid needs to have everything that I didn't, and we give everything to him. And this is not an easy thing to do. It's hard. This is why we give video games. This is why we give them everything, because it's easy to give things than to give of ourselves. To give of our time, our attention, that's hard. And that's love in action. Love is not a feeling. Love is an action. You do it because you know it's your obligation. It's the right thing to do. And because it's positive, it's love. Peter defined charity as action in love. Love in action. So when you love by doing positive things, you are doing charitable work towards your own family, towards your next kinship, who is the closest neighbor to you. We heard from Jesus, love your neighbor as you love yourself. Well, your neighbor that is closest to you is your family. Sometimes we want to love our neighbor that lives in Africa. Oh, let me pray for those who are starving in Africa. But then we have a son, we have a sister, we have a mother-in-law who are love-starved, and we have all the tools to give them food for the soul, and we don't. Oh, I want to help the homeless, and I want to help. It's fine, but we need to love those who are next to us first. We cannot serve humanity and displease our family, because we are serving humanity through our family. When you are born and you have a father and a mother, you have siblings, What is it, the implicit lesson here? Why are we born into families? Why we are not grown from the ground like trees? That's because there is a law of society. We must live together with one another. And since, as a spirit, our main goal is to serve the entire humanity, in your own family, you have different characters that represents the entire family, the entire humanity family. You have a sister who's selfish. You have a brother who's so proud of him, who has so much pride. You have a cousin who has vanity. You have a mother who is lazy. You have a father who is nice. You have another cousin who is a very pleasant gentleman. You have different examples or samples of what you're going to face as a grown-up. We are born into families because when we are together with other people, we cannot think of me alone. Remember Michael Jackson's song, Ben? I used to say, I and me. Now it's us, now it's we. He was referring to his little rat friend. Well, when we are by ourselves, I have to think of what kind of food that I like, what kind of clothes that I like, where I want to go. I don't have to worry about anyone else. Now, when I have a wife, I cannot think of what I want to do. I must think in terms of what we want to do. With my kids, what we would like, where we want to go. So family gives us an opportunity not to live in a selfish style anymore. Question 775. What would be the result for society, the relaxation of family ties? And the highly evolved spirits answered, a magnification of selfishness. The more lonely we live, the more selfish we become. The more in groups we live, the less selfish we become. And that's the main purpose in life, to become less selfish, to love all. As a parent, we will see if our child are carrying these traits. But if we give them stuff, we're not giving them of ourselves. I will see where they're going. They are not being taught by me, so who is teaching my children? Where our children are getting their thoughts from? Outside where? I am not spending time with my children. Media. That includes internet, TV, media. Everything that we watch and we hear shapes our kind of thinking. So from now on, let's think about thoughts the same way we think of food. We must eat every day. We must think every day. It's impossible not to think. Now, the same way we go to different places to get our food, the same way we go to different places to feed ourselves with thoughts. We feed our minds with thoughts. Now, if I'm not spending quality time with my children, and when I say quality, I'm not saying 8 hours per day. It's the quality of time that you spend with them. They're not with me, so they could be probably watching TV. And if they're watching the wrong stuff, the wrong material, that will shape how your child will think. Back in the 1960s, they did this nice experiment. You remember when you drive into the movies and you had this big screen, you sat on your car and you watched the movie from your car? At the bottom of the screen, they had a line that was blinking so fast that people could not rationally understand what the line said. They knew something was there, but they couldn't read it because it was blinking so fast. But their subconsciousness was absorbing that information. And the line read, drink Coca-Cola, drink Coca-Cola, drink Coca-Cola. After 2 hours of reading this line, the movie was over. Now they had Sprite, water, 7-Up, and which one they picked? Coca-Cola. On the following weekend, they changed it to 7-Up. Let's see if it was not just a coincidence. And now they have drink 7-Up, drink 7-Up, drink 7-Up. And people are watching this movie, and subconsciously they're absorbing this information. At the end of the movie, water, lemonade, Coca-Cola was available. Which one they picked? 7-Up. What we watch influences our mind. And if you're watching a cartoon, if you're watching a movie, and the subliminal message of that movie is kill, 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 hit, 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 punch, punch, get violent. What else are you going to do besides get violent? Now, I'm not saying that you're going to turn off the TV and you're going to punch someone. That's not, it works. It's not the way it works. It works in a moment that it requires your reaction. So let's say you're going through a traffic and someone cuts you off. That is an instance that calls for your immediate reaction. And you're going to react by how you feed yourself. And if you fed yourself violently, with violent information, you're going to react with violence. You might cut them again, you might throw them a finger, a gesture, you might curse some words. In family, you might punch a brother or sister because this is how we be feeding their minds with. So we need to pay attention to what they're watching. Also, friends that they have. Friends feeds their minds. The people we allow them to hang out with. It's the law of affinity and the law of influence. If I hang out with people who likes to play the guitar, I'll end up liking guitar and playing as well. If I like to mix with people who like to play basketball, I'll end up playing basketball. If my friend smokes marijuana, I'll end up smoking marijuana. If they like cigars, I'll end up smoking cigars. Because we're led by example. So I will select my children's friends because example changes their minds. And places that we go to feeds our mind with thoughts. Certain place we just shouldn't go. And when we go at these places, we are negatively influenced by the collective thought inside that place. And if we are influenced in a negative way, when there's a moment that calls for our reaction, I react based on how I be feeding my mind with. So a parent's job is to select the kind of content that will go into the child's mind. We are educating them for the world, not for us. Because they come through us, but they don't belong to us. Just like the arrow, they will go straight forward towards the future. That's where the archer, God, aimed the child through you, who is the bow. But God loves the arrow as much as He loves the bow. And as a result, we will achieve our fulfillment, our purpose, our obligations in life, which is to better ourselves and those around us. And even if you do everything that you can, and it doesn't come out as you wished for, don't have no regrets. If you did your best and your child is still not the result of what you expected, that's up to God now. You plant the seed, but God is the one that makes it germinate, flourish, and grow and give its fruits. Important thing is that you fulfilled your job as a parent. And some parents, they get so emotionally attached to their children, and it is normal. But since they don't belong to us, what happens if a child dies? It is so sad. I try to picture and I try to feel, and of course it is impossible, the emotions that goes through a mother's heart when the army comes and tells, your son is dead in the battlefield. And I think it doesn't matter what excuse you give for their death. The pain, I think, is just unbearable. Especially when your comprehension of the afterlife, it is so naive and it doesn't make no sense. A hell and a heaven, people burning hell forever. To you, it is the same as you never meet this person again, because your explanation is not logical. Whenever we are receiving information that is not logic to us, we don't accept it, emotionally or rationally. There's a story about this woman. Her child died, and he was 9 years old. And she was so devastated by it that for weeks she prepared his meals as if he was sitting right there. She waited for him to come back from school. And every night she slept crying and weeping because he was gone on his bed. And one day she was so tired of crying, she was sleeping on the child's bed. She sees herself in the afterlife. And she is walking around this beautiful garden when suddenly she notices all these children flying, playing with one another, as if they were birds with wings. And instinctively, she was looking for her son, but her son was not playing. Where is my son? And now here he comes, walking towards her. She runs to him, hugs him, and he's just standing there being so quiet. And she says, "Sweetheart, why are you not playing with your friends?" And he says, "Mommy, you'll be crying so much because I departed that your tears are making my wings wet and I cannot fly with my friends. They're too heavy. Please stop crying. I still live. I still exist." She came back to her body, woke up from her quote-unquote dream, and she decided to face this new reality with a new disposition. She gave all his belongings to help other children instead in his name. And that relieved her so much from her pain. Because when God calls upon a loved one to depart, yes, we will feel emotional and we'll cry and we'll be sad, but we should avoid despair. Despair opens the wound up. It makes the soul bleed. And it's a sign that we don't have no trust on our Father, on God, who knows the real things that we need, not what we want, which is very different. The best for us always happens to us. What we need, most of the time, it doesn't happen. That's the message of Spiritism. Face your challenges, your family problems with dignity. Have trust. It is important to trust, not blindly, but understanding whatever happens to me, it's the best for me. If my body is going through some sort of illness, some sort of pain, my soul is being cleaned, is being washed. Because there are no pain, they are purposeless. All pain has a good objective on us if we know how to face them without complaining, with dignity. And then we overcome all of our challenges. So the highly evolved spirits have come to teach us this main obligation. We're born into families. Get along with one another. Be grateful. Men, please do not create that big belly. Women, please keep fixing yourselves. Please avoid that big belly. Continue open the doors. Invite them for dinner. Give them flowers. Women, fix your hair. Put some makeup on, please. And take care of yourself. You know. Be grateful to one another. Let's make the journey lighter. Be grateful. Now, there is the story of this couple. This man woke up from a terrible heart attack. And when he opened his eyes, there she was, his wife. And he says to her, "You know, I remember when we first got together and I was rejected from the university. You were there. I remember when I was first fired from my job, there you were. I remember that when I crashed my car, I was in a hospital for 7 days, there you were. I remember when my mother passed away, and that was so painful to me, there you were. And now that I'm waking up here today from a heart attack, here you are. So I conclude, you only gave me bad luck." Very ungrateful man. Be grateful for the little things in life. It makes the journey lighter by helping each other, by recognizing each other's value in our lives. There's a poet who remained anonymously, but we came to know this woman through the great Italian orator Leo Buscaglia. He said that one day he found this note in his desk entitled, "You Didn't." And the note said, "I remember when I asked to borrow your car and you told me, be careful with my car. And I wasn't careful with your car and I dented it. So when I returned to you and you saw that dent, I thought to myself, you're gonna leave me. But then you didn't. I remember one day I forgot to tell you that the party was formal and you showed up in jeans, you're embarrassed. That day I was so sure you're gonna leave me, but then you didn't. One day you invite me to your job's party, and I went with this tight black dress just to provoke you and make you jealous. And that night I was so sure you would abandon me, but then you didn't. And because you respect me so much and you love me so much, I wanted to spend the rest of my life with you, to be thankful and do all nice things to you. But you went to Vietnam and I expected you to come back, but then you didn't. Do not wait for tomorrow. Be nice today. Be thankful today. Honey, I love you. Not honey, I love you. Yeah. That scares anybody. Yeah. Honey, you're important to me. Oh, I'm not going to tell her. She already knows it. No, go ahead. We like to hear these things, don't we? You're important to me. You make my life special. Oh, I'm not going to tell him. He knows it. We love this. These are the real spice to our relationships. And of course, this kind of love between us will transfer the love to our children. The children will be loved. And since it's only natural for them to give so much love, they will have friends. They would have no existential problem. Do I exist? They know they exist because they're felt, they're touched, they're loved by their parents. So for them, it's natural to give love and tenderness to all of their friends. We'll have many friends. Many problems we'll avoid. Take advantage of life by living it wisely. That's the message from the spirits. This is why Castro Alves, through the hands of Chico Xavier, wrote a poem in which he summarizes the objectives and our destiny in life. When he says, life has its mysteries, encompassing laws of beauty, which compels us to evolve. From God we emanate, multiple forms we reincarnate, longing for perfection and love. In humanity we seek the truths from the myth, yearning for peace and evolution. We cause in our path multiple lives and deaths, victims of our own disillusion. Building ourselves from the struggle, we will remain creating and strong, so we can bring about our best, living life unto its fullest until days is last. From the raindrop, a plant reached the top, triumphant at last. The root appears to be gloom, but manure converts to perfume, transmutation at its best. The plant will be crowned with flowers all around, birds opera on their arrival. But flowers too shall pass, their martyrdom is a blast for the ground's revival. From nature we are taught, work hard, that's the law. All life is a movement. Sculpting through sacrifice, we'll carve blocks of vices. Inside a stone lies a monument. Lessons from suffering and pain, change will always reign. Even arrows, tyrants without seas, under the law of reincarnation, through many trials and expiations, will too be messengers of peace. Let no one be idle. Today's angel was yesterday's Adam. Perfection is everyone's destiny. Life's purpose, splendid. God's love, transcendent. Our school, universe's eternity. On earth from time to time, sublime beacons of light dissipates the shadows away. Their presence are felt forever in us they dwell, transforming night into day. Never in history a sacrifice such as the one portrayed by Christ, transpired for the sake of truth. From the cross, the message is heard, forgive all, always serve, your pain I will soothe. It's Socrates and the hemlock. It's Caesar's war being fought, spreading domination and cruelty. It's Celine and his art, the imperialism of Bonaparte, inflaming oppression and tyranny. It's Dr. King's I Have a Dream, Lincoln's speeches never seen, the incarnation of renovators. It's the embodiment of humility. From the charitable Francis of Assisi, the gospel resuscitator. Blessed be the teachers who illuminate the seekers, inspiring virtues and light. Bliss is yours to conquer, although perfection is yonder, your progress is bright. In the entire universe, divine celestial verses decrees, march on. A celestial divine love awaits. Have hope, have faith towards the infinite to come. Thank you, God, for the blessing of speaking. Thank you, Miguel, and the Spiritist group of North Beach for the invitation. And to you all, thank you for listening.
To open 5 minutes for questions before we go to our closing prayer. I don't know when Julio is going to be back. He promised he'll be back one more time this year, correct? Little precious. We hope to have Julio back. If anybody has a question that you'd like to address to Julio at this moment, because later when I try to grab him on the call, and then, you know, he has 4 hours traveling back home, and I'm not going to allow that in the call later. Yes, Ann?
Maybe my question is too broad for another time, but all of these things that you say that we need to do, how can we combat the ill effects of the outside world, which sometimes get the better of all our efforts within our family?
Yes.
These short suggestions.
Our main concern is planting the seed. When we plant a seed, it's not our responsibility to make the seed germinate. Nature, God does that. The root takes place, the stem grows, and then gives a different rise to branches, flowers, and fruits. The farmer plants the seed. The rest is up to God. You make sure that you're doing the right thing. You're planting the seed. The result doesn't belong to you. What it's your concern is the plantation. Of course, we want to see a better world. We want to change our institutions. We want to change the government, the school system, the religious system, everything we want to be changed. But we don't have power over that. We don't have power overseas in the Middle East. We have power over ourselves. Let me stop the war within me. Let me love instead of hate. Let me understand my family. And that kind of love sends vibrations into the air. And those people who wants to feel at peace absorbs those informations. Just the same way that the people who are angry all the time, who are constantly into wars, they are deriving from the spiritual realm the negative vibrations sent by sick mind. We are responsible for the collective unconsciousness. Let our consciousness be of peace, be of happiness. I will quote John Lennon. It doesn't matter what the reasons for war are. Peace is always more important. Such a simple concept and yet so profound. Peace in my family, peace within me. Let me help my children. You know, some parents says, when they grow up, they will choose their religion. Very, very wrong. When they don't want to go to school, we force them to go to school. We want them to dance ballet, we force them to ballet school. We want them to be swimmers, we force them to be swimmers. Why, when it comes to the realm of religion, we want them to choose for themselves? And since we never chose it, they will never choose either. Who will be responsible for that? We are. So we need to plant a good seed, instill in our children the good values. Yes, my friend.
I would like a copy of your closing poem. Where would I find that?
The poem?
Yes.
We're gonna have. I think to take also, but we have a colleague coming from the Spirit Society of Baltimore, and Daniel, and he. I'm going to do it, send it to me, and then you can always send it to me for copy.
That closing statement, it's a poem by Castro Alves. Castro Alves was a Brazilian poet, and he died when he was 24 years old. And he fought for the abolition of slavery in Brazil. And at the age of 24 years old, he was so famous already by the books that he wrote. And when he died, he came through the medium Chico Xavier. Now, the poem itself, it's a very complicated poem to begin with, because each stanza has 6 lines. The first line rhymes with the second line. The third line rhymes with the 6th line. 4th and 5th line rhymes together. It's a complicated rhyme. Well, when you watch Chico Xavier receiving this poem on TV, writing almost at lightning speeds, I mean, that poem alone should consecrate this man as someone out of this world, for the regular media. Because it is such a difficult poem, not only the structure of the poem, but the content of the poem. He's telling us the world history. He's telling us what we went through and our purpose and those who brought us the light of that purpose. So it took us a while, it took us a long time to translate the poem. And because when you translate literature, a book, it's easier because you translated the content. But when you translate a poem, you cannot translate it by killing the rhymes, because what makes a poem beautiful are the rhymes. So if you compare the original in Portuguese with the English version, you're not going to see a literate translation. What you will see, it's a translation of the meaning of each stanza. That's what we try to do when we're translating the poem. So the original in Portuguese, it's not the same as in English. For example, the line that talks about Martin Luther King, I have a dream, that it's not on the original, because that stanza alone, it talks about someone who is very famous in the history of Brazil. So when I say this poem in English, it doesn't make any sense me telling someone who is important in the history of Brazil. It needs to be addressed to the audience. If we were to speak in French, we would look for a French person in history to adapt the poem to that reality. And I know Castro Alves, he will understand what I'm trying to say and what I'm trying to do.
What do you say to families or parents or mothers who already have children who are adults, who haven't done that, who haven't chosen a religion for their child, and their child is suffering because of it? How do you address that and say, well, look, you made a bad decision, now your child is suffering. How do you console the mother now and say, look, this is the product of what you didn't do. So how do we as Spiritists address that?
When someone is facing any kind of problems, we usually like to take the victim role. Why me? Why me? Why me? Poor me, I done everything right. And that position, feeling a victim, it makes the pain humongously strong and leave us powerless as well. Because if I'm a victim, someone else did it, there is nothing for me to do. When we are called to our responsibility, I'm not accusing you of this, you did not commit a sin. You went through a negative experience. And since you went through a negative experience, now you have an obligation to make it a positive experience. Because better late than never. I will change my own life because my kids or anyone else, they don't follow our guidance. They follow our action. We just spent about 3 hours here talking, just talking. But our example, it's what shapes other people's behavior. Joanna Evangelist, in the same book that we had read here in the beginning, Happy Life, she says, not only are we responsible for our actions, but we are also responsible for the actions that we incite in other people as well. I am going around the city, and from my car, I throw a piece of paper on the floor. The driver who is watching me on his own car, he feels like throwing a piece of paper as well. I'm not only responsible for my piece of paper, but for influence him to throw that piece of paper. Because example actually drags people towards us. So you tell that mother, you tell that father, you don't have no control anymore of your child. He is an adult. And in the name of your mistake that you have done to him, you'll put all the effort to transform yourself. Because although you don't have no control of him, you definitely have control over yourself. And since you're still seeing one another on a regular basis or every 6 months, they will notice your change. Because people around you, they might not confess it to you, but they are constantly watching you. You know, let's say you had the habit of cursing, and then you stop cursing, which is the easiest thing to remove from our negative behavior. You know, what's wrong with cursing? You know, does highly evolved spirits express themselves using profanity language? Definitely not. We want to be influenced by them. We should work to be like them. So you stop cursing. You have realized it's an easy thing to do. I would not say that word or this word. And then one day out of nowhere, your family have noticed that you're not cursing anymore, and then you curse out of a reaction. Something falls in your foot, and you say, oh, and you say some word. They will look at you and say, you, the Puritan cursing, huh? They will not acknowledge the fact that you were not cursing. They will acknowledge the fact that you cursed again, which is a proof, it's a fact to you that they have been watching you all this time. So by you transforming yourself, forgiving people, understanding, helping, comprehending, you're not a source of war, you're a source of peace. They will be influenced by your positive behavior. Who knows? You might be preparing yourself for once again for the same mission. You will come back into the next reincarnation with the same son, and now you're more prepared. If this knowledge was not for that, what would be the purpose of us learning all these things now? We came to realize we have done all these mistakes in the past, so what are we going to do now? Are we going to live in our past? No, like Paul used to say, I'm concerned about my future, not my past. We should look ahead, not backwards. Guilt doesn't repair anything. Work repairs everything through love.
You just took my words out of my mouth, because I was sitting there next to Bill, and I was looking myself and to some of you and said, oops, we already raised our children. But it is not us to do that. It's not for us to look to the past. We have many lives ahead of us. What we learn, we learn. So we learn a lot here today. And let's take home, not just today, but eternity, everything that we learn on the positive. And today, one of the good things for us that already raise our kids, it is to help us for the future. For the mothers to be, you know, you're going to have your kids to plan. But we still can help others. We have our grandchildren. You know, we teachers, we have teachers here. We work with the children. And it is like Julie said, it is our example. It is the way we conduct ourselves that we can help others. And I know we all learned so much here today. And one of the things, let's not wear masks. Unless if I needed to represent something for me, my shoulder, sometimes I need a mask. And another great message here today too, is to be authentic. There is nothing wrong with us to be ourselves. All the time. And love us. You know me, how much I love me. And I do love me a lot, you know that. And I wanted that for all of you. Because how can we love? How can I come to you and say I love you when I don't love myself? So I think that that's one step that we need to work. I don't think I didn't work on that. I've been working for many lives, you know. But even if you maybe just like accomplish one thing, oh, that's a lot of progress. And any more questions before I just have to do two announcements and do our close prayers?
So once again, thanks for making me very welcomed. When the group is harmonious, oh, I love you too. When the group is harmonious, like this one, you know, speaking is like riding a bicycle. You do it naturally. So I could feel that the love within you, the respect within you, and differences, of course, because we are thinking entities with different minds. But there is respect, there is love, which makes this place a healing facility, a true hospital in its sense, a hospital for the soul, where we are changing our negative thinking for the positive one, which makes any speaker's here job very easy. So thank you so much for welcoming, for accepting us. And I also want to thank in public my dear friend Tiago, who is driving us around. Thank you.